I'm taking a deep breath before I do my intro. Welcome back to my weekly rant where we talk about what's hot, what's not, and everything in between. It's your girl Dominica. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, and definitely leave me some comments. Did I just say comments? Comments on this video. So I wish I had something stronger today, but I don't. I'm drinking water. Let me take a sip. I've been wanting to do this video for a while. And when I say a while, you know, it hasn't been that long. Maybe about a week or so. I'm looking up at my board. I have a planning board here in my office, and I don't know, it's been up there for about a week, so not super long. So from the title of this video, we're talking about grief. What does grief look like is a question I've been asking myself lately, probably for about a week. Like I said, when I decided to write this up on my board and do this video. And as I've been looking at myself and what I look like, I started to ask this question: what does grief look like? To give you all some background, my mom died March 7th, 2001. And it changed who I am as a person. It has totally changed me in so many ways. And I've had to come to terms with, I think pretty recently, that I am still grieving. That grief is a process. And I did all the things. I went to grief counseling. I went to individual grief counseling. I went to group grief counseling. You know, these are all the things that they recommend and resources that they give to you. And when I say they, let me back up, because this might not be a resource that everybody gets. My mom, she had cancer, and she battled with cancer for 5 years, and she ultimately died of a heart attack. Okay, but before she died of a heart attack, she was in hospice. And part of the hospice services, they provide counseling, and you actually, from what I've learned, get priority on the list, you know, because there are a lot of people waiting for grief counseling, but they give those family members that were in associated with the hospice group. But the hospital my mom went to, I don't know if this is all hospital systems, but the hospital my mom was a part of, the hospice service gave us priority for grief counseling. And so that was for myself, or any family members, for my children even. My son, my youngest son, went through the grief counseling, and I think it was very beneficial for him, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I went through the group counseling. I went through individual grief counseling. I did a group counseling with my brothers, because I have two brothers. I'll talk about them a little bit as well. And I'm just a big advocate on mental health and therapy as a whole. And so I have a therapist outside of grief, and you know, we had conversations leading up to my mom's death and after her death. And so I did all the counseling things, right? And I would say after my last grief counseling session, which was a grief counseling session, I left that last session feeling like, if I'm honest, like, this is some bullshit. You know, that's how I felt, because I felt like this didn't help me. That's how I honestly felt. And I just left therapy alone for a while, and I haven't resumed therapy. And this was back in March. It was like a 1-year anniversary of my mom's passing. I had completed like a group grief therapy session. I was just like, I'm good. I'm not doing any more grief counseling right now. And I haven't been doing any counseling at all since March of this year. And I'll tell you this, I could feel it. I could feel the effects of it, and I've come to the terms with, I still need some help right now. I still need some tools. What I will say, when I felt that way, like, this is some bullshit, I was feeling like the tools that they were giving me, I wasn't really seeing a immediate, like, response. I wasn't seeing, like, I was implementing the tools or trying to implement them, and I wanted it to work right away. I wanted to feel better. And what I've learned is that I didn't have to feel better. I don't have to feel better right away. It doesn't have to work right away. And that that's okay. And I think that that's part of the issues that I'm dealing with. It's like, I don't want to feel the pain. You know what I mean? I don't even think, if I'm perfectly honest, that I've sat in the pain or really, like, felt it. I've tried. I continue to try to move through it, and I'm learning and seeing, when we go back to our question, what does grief look like, that I'm doing things to not feel the pain, if that makes sense. And it's coming out for me in different ways, like being super busy, keeping myself busy all the time. Just, you know, I started noticing that about myself before my mom died. Like, towards the end, when she was having some issues, I was like making myself busy. And I will tell you guys something absolutely insane, absolutely crazy. At my mom's wake, that's what they call it, right? There was like flowers and gifts that was coming in, you guys. I was getting up, like, reading the cards, and, like, okay, making sure I had the cards together and organized, and thinking, like, okay, let me make sure that I have these here so I can thank these people. And I was just doing stuff to stay busy. Like, and when I think about that, I realize how crazy that is, right? But I realized, like, why I was doing that. And a friend of mine, or a friend of my husband's, actually, he's the funeral director where who did my mom's services. And he came up to me and he was like, okay, Dominique, you know that that's my job, right? You know that I'm going to take care of all of that. You know, I'm going to get all the cards. I'm going to collect them for you. I'm going to put them in a box, and you'll have all that later. Like, you're supposed to go sit down somewhere, you know, but I'm found myself, and sometimes now continually find myself trying to keep busy. And so I have to be aware of that. Is that like a trauma response, or am I really busy, right? And so I feel fortunate a little bit, probably more than others, that certain aspects of my business have slowed down a little bit, and I've been taking advantage of that. And it's just been giving me the space to think and be aware of, like, that's what you're doing, that's what you were doing, and you need to really kind of stop and feel this. The other thing, when I ask myself, what does grief feel like? Since losing my mom, I don't really sleep well at all. And I've never had a problem with sleep. Sleep has been like one of my favorite things in life, probably since I was born. Okay, I love to sleep. I love a good nap. I will get in the bed and I'm out. Now, I'm up really late at night. I was always kind of up late, but now it's just ridiculously late. And when and if I do go lie down, it's hard for me to go to sleep. And I told myself yesterday, I'm like, I can really articulate what this feels like now. It's like I can go to sleep, but I'm not resting. And I was able to identify, like, damn, there's a difference between sleep and rest. Because at some point I will eventually go to sleep, but I wake up and I'm like, I'm not rested. That was not a restful sleep. I could feel myself in my sleep tossing and turning, and just, anyway, sleep has been a major issue for me since she died. Anxiety, a lot of thought around death. I think about death a lot now, a lot more than I used to. It makes, when you lose somebody really, really close to you, it makes it so real. I mean, we all hear and we all know we're all gonna die, right? We're all gonna die. We all know that. It sounds like okay, but when somebody that's attached to you as close as my mom was and still is attached to me, when they die and that the reality of that hits you, you're like, oh shit, like, oh, death is really like, this is real. There's going to come a day where you're no longer here, and that reality and living in that reality is undescribable. It's undescribable. Shock. I want to keep circling back to what the question is. What does grief look like? Shock. Yeah, it can also manifest, for me, it manifests physically. I'm not a big crier, and I think sometimes people think like if somebody doesn't cry that they're not sad, or that they're not hurt, or they're not hurting as much as the person sitting next to them is wailing. And that's false. That's false. When I realized that my mom was no longer here, my body collapsed. It just fell to the ground. Like, I had no warning of it. No, it just fell to the ground. And before my body collapsed and fell to the ground, I was hyperventilating uncontrollably. And then I just collapsed. I don't even know what that is, or what that it just, what does grief look like? what does this whole thing look like? It's a lot. It's a lot. So I said, I know I'm kind of all over the place, you guys, but this is just a topic that I've been wanting to talk about, and yeah. So bear with me. The other thing that I want to touch on is this has made me be extremely more empathetic, because you really do, once you experience it, you really do understand what it feels like, right? So when someone else experiences death and loss, like, I could feel it. I get it. And now it's helped me really understand how to help and respond to people, versus in the past, if I had a friend or a family or even an associate or anybody that I know experienced a loss, a lot of times I didn't know what to do, what to say, what. Right now, I really understand how I could possibly be there for someone. Now, mind you, everybody is different, but I feel like I have a better insight on that. And what I will say is very true, and most of you guys have probably heard this. You lose somebody, everybody's calling you, everybody's checking up on you, you're just flooded for probably about a week or two. You know, everybody's like, oh my God, we're going to be there for you, we want to do this, we're going to do that. And then as the months go on, people start looking at you like, you ain't over that shit yet. You know, like, you get the sense like they don't want to hear about the shit no more. They don't want, like, if you talking about it. I found myself months and months and months and months, and even still today, I've learned kind of how to temper it. But talking about my mom a lot, talking about her death a lot, talking about, I just needed to get it out. And after so much time, it's like most people don't really want to, they don't really want to hear it no more, you know? And so that's allowed me to understand, like, if somebody I know, a friend, family member, or even somebody I don't know. You all know or may not know, I own a notary loan signing company, and I'll run into people sometime in the course of my signing who have just lost a loved one, and they're signing documents. You know, it could be a death deed. I just did one a couple weeks ago. I will sit and I will talk to them. A lot of times they want to talk about what just happened. I literally just had this happen to me, and a woman lost her husband, and she was like, he was just here last week, and she explained to me what happened to him. What she just wanted to talk about it. And I sat there and I listened and I talked to her. But I get it. I get it. For me, that was very helpful. I needed to talk about it. Sometimes I still need to talk about it. And so I would just say, if you have a friend or family member who have lost someone very close to them, let them talk about it as long as they want to talk about it. Don't, you know, if you have the capacity to. You know, I know all of us don't have the capacity for that, but try. Because your friends don't want to feel like they're being a burden to you by talking about it. They don't want to feel weird if they just fucking start crying one day, you know, because that happens to me sometimes. Anything sometimes could trigger it, and I might start crying, or I'll just be sad or something, you know. And sometimes the people will be like, what's wrong with her? Like, oh, she's still tripping off her mom? Yeah. Yeah. And I also want to say this, those of you who have been through grief counseling, one of the things that I heard in grief counseling, and it rings in my head a lot, is I remember the grief counselor kept saying that the statement is false. You know how people say this statement, like, once you lose somebody, the pain never goes away. Like, you're always going to feel like this. And the counselor, the group that I was in, was like, that's a false statement. You should not always feel like this. It should get better. And she put the onus back on us. In order for that to occur, you have to use these tools that I'm giving you, right? And so that's where I kind of got a little resistant to therapy, the grief therapy, because I was like, I'm in pain. I just want to be in pain. I don't want to use no tools. Like, girl, bye. Like, you know, and so I struggle with that still, you know, but I know in the back of my mind, I'm like, she's right. You know, they do give you certain tools and things to use, and you use and implement these things, and they do help. But that it's difficult. It's very, very difficult. As I mentioned, I have two brothers. I am the youngest. So my mom, myself, my two brothers, it was like this. We've been like this our entire life. This, like, you can't pull us apart. Probably even a little codependent. I don't know. You know, some may call it that, but we just called it love and closeness. And so my brothers and I we're effed up, for a lack of a better word. We are effed up. And I'm glad that we have each other, and we're trying as hard as we can to live this life, but it is hard. It is hard. And my mom was very close to all of our children. So as I mentioned earlier, my children, they had their own struggles. The grief therapy did help a lot for my youngest son. My teenage son, he didn't want to go. You know, you don't want to force him. He has his own thing, and he dealt with it his own way, and I let him do that. But my younger son, I found that he's 6. I'm giving you guys this information for your reference if it's something that you're dealing with or struggling with. I'm hoping this might help. He's 6 years old, and for his age group, the counseling helped very, very well, because what I learned was, like, death and the concept of death and how my mom died and all these other things. It's kind of hard sometimes for a 6-year-old to articulate how they're feeling about it, number one, and be given the space to talk about it. And what the breakthrough he had in therapy is that when my mom, we had her wake, I did not want him to go inside. I did not want him to see her in a casket. I just didn't. And he came with us, and family members were outside with him in the car, and he was just like, no, I want to go in. And so anyways, we finally made the decision. We let him go in, and we let him see my mom. And what came out in therapy, you know, was art. They implemented a lot of art. He drew a picture of her, and the picture he drew was her in the casket. And he it wasn't like he was traumatized by seeing her in the casket. What we learned through therapy is that he didn't understand what happened to her. And a lot of times we have to take the time to explain to kids. This is something I learned when somebody dies, not like, oh, they're gone, they went to heaven. Like, they really need to understand the mechanics behind it in the way that they can understand. So we had to explain to him that, you know, her heart stopped working, you know, because a lot of his hurt, we found, was in not knowing and nobody telling him exactly what happened. And so giving him the language to understand what happened, how it happened, you know, we kind of discount sometimes kids and their ability to understand things, and we kind of just brush it to the side. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from therapy, and I'm so glad that that I had him go, because he had a major breakthrough after that, and he's been much calmer after that, because up until then he was like crying a lot, just having crying fits, which we learned was like a part of grief for kids. So sometimes in kids it'll show up like that, where they'll kind of go backwards in their maturity. So he was 6, he was probably 5 at the time, he's 6 now. He kind of started acting like a 3-year-old, you know, crying all the time. And I'm like, what the heck is this? What's wrong with this? And I learned that that was grief showing up in him at that age, right? But when we gave him the full explanation of what happened, kind of gave him some tools to work through it, he's fine. He's doing a lot better now. And he probably, out of everybody in the house, I think deals with it the best and honors my mom in amazing ways every day. And so I'm so proud of him for that. Yeah, I think that's all I have for now, you guys. But the question remains, what does grief look like? I really want you guys to drop down in the comments and let me know, what does grief look like to you? If you're going through a loss, let me know. Let's have this conversation in the comments. I really want to facilitate this space for us to be able to talk, for you all to, if you're going through something like this, like I am, for you to know that you have support, that you have a space that you can talk and vent and whatever, you know, that's kind of what I want to create here. And so with that, I will see you all in the next video. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. I love y'all. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.